YouTube is full of videos about good knives. It's full of videos about bad knives. It's high time that someone makes a video about weird knives. This is 3 Weird Knives, and I'm your host, JJJinks!
Let's get weird.
So I thought I would kick off this episode of 3 Weird Knives with JJJinks with this unique little knife made by Schrade. I've got a bunch of OTFs and a bunch of other knives from Schrade, but none of them quite like this. They make a lot of those, I guess, street legal OTFs because of the way that it actuates, and it's a complicated way to get around a legal requirement, but what we're looking at here is one of those knives where the blade is stored in the handle, and you have a safety here. When you see the dot, it is ready to deploy, and it comes out the side like this. There we go. Sort of. So yeah, there's this hole down here that you put your finger through, and it pushes the blade out, and then the spring takes over and the blade just flies out the side. So it's an OTS knife. I do like this like dried mud sort of riverbed kind of deal at the basin where the blade came out of. And then to get the blade back in, you pull down on the lever here, and that frees it from its lock. And then you very carefully swivel it back into place where it then slams down into the dried riverbed. In the long term, I would imagine that might actually mar the finish on this thing, but let's be honest, nobody uses these for anything because they're very uncomfortable to hold. It's a lot of handle and a little bit of blade. Cool mechanism, cool novelty factor. I'll give it that for sure. Another interesting thing is that the spring mechanism is actually external on this piece. I don't know why they didn't try to somehow fit that on the inside, but this wheelie thing you see contains the spring that makes it come out. It is a Tanto with a little bit of a swedge. One of the other things about this knife that I thought was weird is the pocket clip, which is huge, with the hole in it to allow your finger access. I guess that's the way they had to do it, but you can't put it anywhere else because then it would block the hole, and so you're stuck with tip-down carry. But since it's an out-the-side knife, I don't know if that really applies in the same way. So it's a fun and weird little thing to fidget with. Next up, we have this little Keychain Bally knife that I picked up when I was out driving somewhere near Missouri. I don't exactly remember where. It was a gas station kind of in the middle of nowhere that had tons of novelty knives and like bongs and incense burners and stuff like that. Really cool place. And I spotted these in a box for like 50 cents a piece, so I just had to have one. So what we're looking at is a little Keychain Bally that has card suits cut out of the handles. You got diamonds, cloves, hearts, and clubs. Cloves. You got diamonds, clubs. You got from top to bottom diamonds, clubs, hearts, and spades. This thing is about as cheap and awful as it looks. The blade is this tiny, ugly thing. It's hardly even sharp. Look at this. But why would it be? It's just a little toy thing that you put on your keychain, right? And it's so dull that you don't even have to worry about whether or not you know how to properly open one of these or not, which I don't. There is a little safety latch to keep it closed. You got to really squeeze it in order to get the latch in place when the knife is open, which I think is the way it's supposed to be, because then it's under tension, right? I don't know, I'm not a butterfly knife kind of guy. You got a little bit of jimping up here at the top, or is that a sawtooth thing? I don't know. Why does this knife exist? I mean, yeah, it's a keychain novelty, obviously, but what a weird thing to make a novelty item for. I mean, I've seen everything from like keychain surfboards or keychain, I don't know, koala bears. Who thought, you know what, we need to make a keychain Bally song with gambling paraphernalia in the handle. I thought that was weird. Last but not least for this episode is what I call the Terminator Knife, which came in a really nice nylon sheath. I featured this knife on a video years ago when I first got it, but I've got a better camera now, and I thought that maybe you would appreciate a closer look at this really weird knife. This knife is really dangerous. I cut myself twice when I first got this thing because of the very unique opening mechanism, and I'll show it to you right now. It's mechanically actuated, so as you move the blade, the handle, see how that's coming out there, and then when you come around the pivot, it will chunk, snap into place. I thought that was like the coolest friggin' thing ever, and I had to get this. And what we see on the blade is this JJJinks symbol. So if you want to get your hands on one of these, type that into Amazon. You can find these still. They're not that expensive, but I gotta warn you, closing this knife is dangerous as hell. Check it out. So you begin by reversing the mechanism. You pull this part out, but at some point you gotta get your fingers out of the way because the blade is just uncontrollable, and it just kind of says, all right, I'm gonna shut now. And it happens before even the halfway point. You see, I'm not even at a 90-degree angle yet, and oh, there it goes. That's how I cut myself, and it comes down with quite a bit of force, too. It's a guillotine for the fingers. I really, really like it. It's just so dangerous. One of the other interesting things about this knife is that on the flipper tab, which, yeah, you can open it with the flipper tab, too, but it's got a cutout. For some reason, I've never seen a flipper tab with a cutout like that before. It's actually not that uncomfortable in the hand. You got pretty good jimping all around it. And it certainly looks menacing, if that's your thing. Last thing I wanted to point out, I survived, is the way that this pocket clip is put into place. It is actually bolted down on one side, but then it comes up and over and down the other side. So it's like the lowest possible riding knife pocket clip that you could possibly have. And that's just kind of a different way of doing it, I guess. I appreciate that. I don't know why they didn't just bolt it to this side. Maybe they thought it would be too short and wanted it to start up here, so they arced it over. That is one of many questions I would have for the designer of this very weird knife.